Tonight, breaking news, Hurricane Barry strikes, the first of the season, slamming ashore as a Category 1, 75 miles an hour and a powerful storm surge. Homes and cars underwater, emergency rescues, more than 100,000 without power. Flooding danger, the torrential rain hitting right now, a significant threat to life and property. An anxious eye on the riverbanks and levees, the slow-moving rainmaker hovering over the coast, then moving north. Deadly terror attack, a suicide car bomb, then gunmen storming a hotel overseas. More than 24 killed, at least 1 American. Fiery crash, the small plane crashing into a community center, flaming wreckage burning in the pool. Border reality, the vice president face-to-face with migrants at a detention center, calling it, quote, very tough stuff, as thousands rally in cities across the country, bracing for sweeping raids on undocumented immigrants. And inside the shootout, the high-speed chase and shootout with police. After the driver runs away, police find 3 little children in that car.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I'm Tom Yamas. And we begin with the first hurricane of the season, slamming ashore. Barry hammering the Gulf Coast with fierce winds. And at this hour, torrential and potentially even more dangerous rain just getting started. The hurricane striking the Louisiana coast with 75-mile-per-hour winds. The worst of the winds west of New Orleans, leaving damage behind, knocking over trees onto homes and destroying this car. And right now, more than 120,000 people are without power. That radar map, you see it there, showing the heavy rain just touching the coast, set to move very slowly to the north. And at this hour, the torrential rain is just getting started. An ominous night lies ahead. ABC's Zachary Keish starts us off in Morgan City, Louisiana, feeling the worst of the storm right now.
Tonight, Hurricane Barry is slamming the Louisiana coast, packing heavy rain, relentless winds, and a dangerous storm surge. The storm made landfall just west of Morgan City as a Category 1 hurricane. Wind gusts topping 50 miles per hour uprooted trees. This car was crushed and this camper was flipped on its side. The strength built as Barry closed in on the coast. Floodwaters were just too much for this truck. You can see downed power lines littered Morgan City. At least 120,000 in the dark across the state.
A city that hadn't seen a hurricane in 10 years, we found our weak spots quick, and we ended up with some utility issues.
Today, the Coast Guard reporting at least 11 people rescued. Now, Barry is making a slow march across Louisiana at roughly 5 miles an hour, and it's delivering a brutal pounding.
You can tell by the size of the roots there, this is a big tree. Check it out. It's completely knocked off the side of this house and smashed this SUV.
Antonio Collins says they're not out of the woods yet.
Is the storm what you anticipated, or is
we ain't got the worst part yet.
The intense rainfall will likely continue throughout the night, a potential catastrophe for this town.
Morgan City has 7 pumping stations just like this. Now, this is a backup that's been brought in. Now, the fear is that they'll be overwhelmed if we get to 2 feet of rain that's been forecast.
Here in Morgan City, residents that remain are told to shelter in place, and if you look around tonight, it's a ghost town.
All right, and Zachary Keish is right there, feeling the effects of Barry. He's in Morgan City as high winds and floodwaters continue to rise. Zachary, the entire city is now without power, and it's going to be a while to get the power back with the storm still hitting.
Tom, as long as this wind and rain persists, there's nothing they can do to restore power. On many levels, it's a waiting game. Now, they are trying to help those who can't help themselves, providing an emergency generator to an assisted living facility. Tom?
Zachary Keish reporting live from Morgan City right now. And as we said, the torrential rain from Barry is just getting started, and we already are seeing its damaging effects. Flooding in Myrtle Grove, Louisiana, cutting off Highway 445, and this neighborhood in Livingston Parish is already underwater. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is in New Orleans tonight.
Tonight, floodwaters rising on the outskirts of New Orleans. Lakeshore Drive in Mandeville inundated with storm surge. High winds and heavy rain have city officials bracing for the worst.
The primary risk continues to remain heavy rains for the city of New Orleans.
This levee south of the city spilling over, one of several to breach, submerging vulnerable neighborhoods.
We have our boats, generators, as well as our high water vehicles stationed across the city in preparation for any events that we may face within the next 24 to 36 hours.
Authorities are confident that the levees and these flood walls will not be overtopped. The question is how much heavy rainfall falls into the city that sits below sea level, and can the massive pumps like this one keep pushing that water out?
Earlier in the week, a much smaller storm dumping enough rain to overwhelm those pumps and flood downtown. New Orleans hoping they can keep up, this time with a tropical storm. In nearby Baton Rouge, locals stacking sandbags, hopeful they can avoid a disaster. Alex Perez is there.
The vicious wind already creating some big problems. This massive tree came crashing down into the middle of the street onto this power line and snapping this utility pole just like a twig. And the window of concern here far from over. The rain and the wind will persist here in Baton Rouge through the night.
Flooding killed 13 here in 2016, a tragedy still fresh in people's memory.
Not looking forward to it, but the main talk is just praying that it won't be as bad as they're forecasting as far as the river flood stage.
All right, and tonight, Rob Marciano right there in some of that flooding. He joins us live. Rob, where's the most danger heading into the night?
Well, I'll tell you what, Tom, the next 2 days are going to be worse than the last 2 days, and right here in Louisiana and really across the northern Gulf Coast is the worst. This storm surge, look at this. We have businesses that are inundated. This is a lake. Look at the big breakers off this lake, about a 5-6 foot storm surge, and with this south wind ongoing, this is not going anywhere. The center of the storm right now, about 20 miles west of Lafayette, Louisiana. Look at all the heavy rain as far east as Mobile. We've got flash flood warnings in effect there. This thing will drift to the north tonight, but the rain shield is not going to move all that much. So we've got rainfall that could get all the way to Paducah, Kentucky. That's where the flash flood watches extend right on through Monday and Tuesday for 10 to 20 inches of additional rainfall right in the crux there. And again, once this south wind keeps going, this water with this storm surge is not going anywhere anytime too soon. Dangerous hours ahead. Tom?
Rob Marciano right there as the water levels are rising tonight. Rob, thank you. We head overseas now to another breaking story we're following. At least one American is among more than 24 killed in a deadly terror attack in Somalia. The siege began with a suicide car bombing at a hotel and lasted more than 14 hours. The Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab is claiming responsibility. ABC's Julia McFarland has more.
Tonight, the shocking terror siege on a hotel in Somalia. 26 people killed, including at least one American. The carnage unfolding Friday night when officials say a suicide bomber drove a car packed with explosives into the entrance of the Asase Hotel in the port city of Kismayu, a town on Somalia's southern coast. Gunmen then storming the building, with the siege lasting more than 14 hours. The hotel itself, popular with foreigners and lawmakers, now a shell decimated by shrapnel and bullet holes, debris and burnt-out cars littering the streets. Tonight, the terror group Al-Shabaab claiming responsibility.
We demand a full investigation about the whole incident.
The State Department confirming at least one American is among the dead. Also killed, Canadian journalist Hoda Nalaye and her husband. She had returned to Somalia in search of positive stories about the people in the area.
Al-Shabaab, a terror group allied to Al-Qaeda, are behind some of the deadliest attacks in Eastern Africa, including Somalia's worst ever attack in 2017. That killed hundreds. Tom?
Julia, thank you. Next, as immigration agents prepare for sweeping raids across the country, Vice President Mike Pence came face-to-face with the border reality, visiting 2 migrant detention facilities in Texas, seeing dozens of men in holding pens, calling this, quote, very tough stuff. It comes as thousands rallied against those coming raids, this protest in Chicago. ABC's David Wright reporting from the White House tonight.
As ICE prepares to round up thousands of undocumented immigrants Sunday, Vice President Mike Pence toured 2 detention centers near the Texas border.
This is tough stuff. I knew we would see a system that is overcrowded. It's overwhelmed.
Some of the cages standing room only. The heat sweltering, the smell overpowering. The men have no ready access to water, no cots to sleep on, just the concrete floor. Some of them said they'd been here 40 days.
We are not a terrorist.
The vice president also met with children being held in a different area.
Are you comfortable? Are you being well taken care of. Okay.
Pence's upbeat exchange in stark contrast to the chilling first-hand accounts of young detainees filed last month in federal court in California. One 17-year-old from Guatemala told his court-appointed lawyer, "It's always cold in the cage."
Different from what we hear from many of the critics. I couldn't be more impressed with the compassionate work that our Customs and Border Protection are doing here at this facility.
Democrats in Congress were close to tears as they described what they witnessed at another Texas facility.
Imagine traveling thousands of miles in grueling and dangerous conditions because you have no other option, only to be separated from your family, from your children, thrown into overcrowded cages, denied a shower, toothbrush, and yes, Mr. Chairman, drink water out of the toilet.
With ICE now hoping to round up some 2,000 undocumented immigrants this weekend, advocacy groups are pushing back with protests like this one in cities across the country.
If they're not doing any harm and they're not breaking any laws, why should they get deported? Especially if they have kids.
And David Wright joins us now. David, what's the latest that we know about these immigration raids?
Well, the president says those raids will happen tomorrow. 9 cities, we're told, on the list, but 2 cities, Houston and New Orleans, have been told not to worry. They have enough to deal with the hurricane. Tom?
David Wright for us tonight. David, thank you. And there is a new focus to the investigation of alleged sex abuser Jeffrey Epstein tonight. Officials are now looking closely at his sprawling New Mexico ranch. This as prosecutors are fighting to keep the multimillionaire behind bars, claiming he paid off potential witnesses ahead of his arrest. ABC's Ariel Reshef has the new details.
Tonight, officials in New Mexico announcing multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein's sprawling desert property outside Santa Fe, known as Zorro Ranch, is now tied to an investigation. The Attorney General's office telling ABC News it has been in contact with survivors and is investigating this horrific matter and will be forwarding additional evidence to federal authorities in New York for proper action. Epstein is also facing new allegations he paid 2 potential witnesses in New York a combined $350,000 to stay quiet. Federal prosecutors accusing Epstein of witness tampering, claiming he wired the funds last year, fearing the 2 might testify against him in a future trial after the publication of a newspaper story alleging he sexually abused underage girls. Prosecutors say Epstein demonstrated a willingness to use intimidation and aggressive tactics in connection with a criminal investigation. The accusations coming to light as prosecutors argue the disgraced financier charged with sex trafficking should remain in federal lockup without bail, claiming his extreme wealth and resources make him a flight risk. But Epstein's attorneys want him to remain detained at home with a GPS monitor while awaiting trial.
Money should not be able to hide you.
Using his $77 million Manhattan mansion and private jet as collateral.
I don't understand why it's a question like, hey, you know, how many chances and how many slaps on the wrist are you going to get before somebody's going to, like, lock the door and lock you in it?
And the battle over bail comes as ABC News learns about a dozen new accusers have come forward in recent days with allegations against Epstein. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges here in New York. And Tom, as you know, if convicted, he faces up to 45 years behind bars.
All eyes will be on that court case on Monday. All right, thanks so much, Ariel. Next to the newly released dash cam video showing a high-speed chase that ended in a shootout in a Nashville area neighborhood. Police say the driver shot repeatedly at police before running away. Only then did they realize the man had his 3 small children inside of his car. ABC's Stephanie Ramos with that video.
Tonight, dramatic dashcam video shows police officers in Tennessee chasing after their suspect with 3 small children in his car, the youngest just 9 months old. Drivers pulling over as officers try to catch up to 21-year-old Darian Williams. Eventually, officers force Williams' car onto a front lawn, but police say that's when Williams pulls out a rifle and fires at officers. These windows in a nearby house hit.
I've been here since 1988. I've never seen anything like this happen.
You see one officer dug out of his vehicle as his SUV gets pelted by bullets. No one was hurt. Williams eventually surrendered. Police say this all started earlier that morning when Williams fired a shot in his apartment that went into another unit. When officers showed up, Williams took off, leading police on the wild cross-county chase.
Williams is facing several charges, including attempted murder of an officer. The 3 young kids that police say were with him are said to be okay. Tom.
Stephanie, thank you. And there's Mike now with a deadly plane crash outside of Houston, Texas. A single-engine plane plunging from the sky, crashing into a local community center. Here's ABC's Clayton Sandell.
A quiet Saturday morning shattered in the blink of an eye.
A plane just crashed.
A home security camera capturing a small plane slamming into a building at a Katy, Texas community center. The pilot, the only person on board, was killed. The plane crashing into a maintenance building filled with chemicals, sending burning debris flying into a swimming pool just 30 minutes before it was set to open.
The clubhouse itself was occupied by a few people at the time, preparing and getting ready, decorating for a wedding that was going to be held here at this location this evening. So those people were not injured.
Officials say the plane, a Cessna 172 like this one, took off from West Houston Airport and had only been airborne for a few minutes.
And tonight, both the FAA and the NTSB are investigating, and that wedding that was supposed to happen tonight at that community center now has to find a new venue. Tom?
Clayton, thank you. It's just getting started, and already we're seeing some of the damage. ABC's Rob Marciano back with us tonight live inside the storm zone. Rob?
Hey, Tom, unfortunately, the backside of this is going to be much worse than the front side. The center, just west of Lafayette, slowly moving towards the north, and all that heavy rain you see on the radar to the east is going to remain there at least for the next day to day and a half. So wet times ahead, flash flood watches extending well north into the central U.S. Tom?
All right, Rob, you and your team stay safe tonight. We turn now to a shark scare off Cape Cod tonight. A great white spotted just 50 yards offshore, and several more reported just minutes later on that same beach, as well as other beaches, shutting down swimming at several sites. Police urging that entire coastline to be on alert. And in Fort Lauderdale, a violent jailhouse beating caught on camera. A handcuffed inmate kicking something on the ground towards an officer's deputy when that deputy suddenly punches him, knocking him to the ground. The Broward County Sheriff calling that deputy's actions unacceptable. That deputy has since been fired. And when we America strong, here at home and in nearly every corner of the world, there is a debate and struggle over immigration. One little girl from Grapevine, Texas, heard one story about the plight of refugees and had heard enough. Tonight, what she decided to do.
When most kids spin a globe, they're likely thinking, where can I go? But 6-year-old Paisley Elliott is a little different. She's thinking, where can I help? 2 years ago, while in preschool, she listened to a Bible story. It was about refugees, and it sparked a lot of questions for Paisley.
Oh, great. You learned about refugees at school. Wasn't necessarily a topic I wanted to discuss at length with a 4-year-old.
Paisley learned there are refugees not only in her home state of Texas, but all over the world.
Because they had to run away from danger. Their country is not safe.
So she started with stuffed animals, collecting 250, donating them to kids in war-torn Syria. From there, she visited refugees in Mexico to deliver 500 pounds of donated supplies.
And she came back and she just said, my heart's going to explode.
And Paisleys' passion for giving is only getting stronger. She started a nonprofit called Paisleys House to try and build a school for children at the Muir camp, considered one of the worst refugee camps on the planet, located in Lesbos, Greece.
Lemonade for sale.
She donated her piggy bank and is selling $3 glasses of lemonade and making sure customers know where the funds are going.
I am not keeping the money. I'm building with the money.
And today we caught up with her as she was with her family in Nicaragua donating school supplies.
I want to change kids' lives so that they can have a bigger education.
Paisley has already been recognized by the UN. Again, she's only just 6 years old, a little girl making a big change.
I'm never going to stop changing the world. I'm going to do it forever.
All right, and we will be tracking all of Paisley's amazing work. We want to thank our friends at WFAA in Dallas-Fort Worth for their help on that story, and we thank you for watching. I'm Tom Yamas in New York, GMA, and This Week, first thing in the morning, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a great evening. Good night.